Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about latency. Latency is one of the first things that you come across when you decide to build a little recording studio. You got some computer recording you want to do, and it just kills recordings. There's a lot. I hear from a lot of players that they just can't get a good recording because the latency is just killing their system, and they don't end up using it as much as they should. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. What is latency? Latency is the difference in time that it takes the tracks inside your DAW to reach the speakers and the tracks coming through, then the instruments coming through your DAW, whether it's a guitar or a mic or whatever, to reach your speakers. And they both reach those speakers at two different times. The reason is the stuff that's already in your DAW, the tracks like a drum track or loops or whatever, they get output no problem. They hit the speakers real fast. The stuff going in has to pass through your audio interface, your converters, through the USB. It's got to go through the ASIO driver. It's got to go through your DAW software. And even though electricity is moving at the nearly the speed of light, that still adds that bunch of milliseconds that causes the audio latency. Now, the technical term for that audio latency is delayed auditory feedback. There's a delay in the auditory feedback between something that happens and when you hear that thing happening. It's been studied quite extensively. A university in Belgium has done a study with musicians, and they discovered that when musicians were subjected to greater and greater amounts of latency, that they started getting tense in their hips and their elbows and their shoulders and their wrists, and they couldn't play anymore. They were tensing up, trying to compensate for the latency. And the kind of the funniest thing about the whole thing was that all these musicians ended up moving their head more in the study because they're just trying to plow through that latency. Oh my God. And they couldn't do it. So it turns out latency is a killer of awesome performances. It's also the killer of all the fun you're having in the studio. So to overcome the latency problems, there are two things you can do. The first thing, the obvious thing, is go to the setup panel in the software for your DAW and make sure that you've got the ASIO driver selected, and that if there's any latency compensation or any buffer sizing in there, that you get the smallest buffer that you can inside your DAW controls. Now I use Cubase. I don't know what you guys are using, but Cubase has its own little system for setting this up, and make sure you get the right driver. Right driver, ASIO driver, means the least amount of latency. Windows drivers and stuff like that, just going to give you massive amounts of latency. The next thing that you can do is go to the software panel for your sound card, your input-output device, and make sure that in there you also have the buffer size set to the lowest size that you can possibly get before you start to get audio artifacts and dropouts and just stuff that you don't want. You might get pops and clicks. You want to get just beyond that so that your audio is clean and pristine, but you still have the lowest buffer size you can possibly get. That's just a given. I would consider that to be a given. You guys should all know this stuff by now, because that's every video on the internet seems to be about making sure you got those buffer sizes right. That's going to help you a little bit, but it's not going to completely overcome your latency. So if you want to really get down to zero latency like they do in real studios, you're going to have to monitor outside of your computer, outside of your DAW, before the signal gets to the computer at all. And there's a term for this. It's discrete monitor mixing. And what you want in your studio is a discrete monitor mix that allows you to monitor everything outside the computer. That's the secret to zero latency recording. Now, discrete monitor mixing works like this. You've got to get a little mixer. You've got to get a little 6 or 8 channel non-powered mixer that has auxiliary or effects output buses, and it has a channel that is a summing channel for hooking your MP3 player up to, that has a pair of inputs but only one slider that does both the left and right. Because if it doesn't have that, then you've got to have your DAW on 2 channels and pan hard left and right. And you got to get a mixer that does all that. And then here's how you hook that thing up. You plug all your instruments into your mixer, and then you plug the outputs of your audio interface also into that summing channel of your mixer, into the music channel. And now you've got all your instruments plus your computer into a mixer, and that mixer into an amplifier and into speakers, or into just a pair of powered speakers, however you work it. And so the sliders on the channels are now your levels for each of your instruments. Your slider for your summing slider that has the 2 channels coming in, and just the 1 slider has got your computer in it. It's going from your outputs of your audio interface into the channel, so that's your computer. And then your main output slider will be the thing that controls the overall volume of the entire room. You can use headphones, that's just fine. You can use the slider, that's just fine. If you're playing guitar against drums and you really want to get into it, want to crank it up a little bit. So the discrete monitor mix is the real secret. So what you would do, here's an example of how you would set that up. You've got your guitar box, and it's got a pair of stereo outs, because they're all stereo these days. Although, as an engineer, I'm going to tell you it's better for you to use mono guitar tracks. We'll go more into that in another video. But you're using your stereo tracks, you're enjoying it, you're loving it, you're having fun. Who might harsh your buzz? What you do is, you take your 2 auxiliary outputs, and on the left channel, you go auxiliary 1, full volume. On channel 2, you go auxiliary 2, full volume. And then you go out of your auxiliary 1 and 2 as if they're a left and right output. And you go from there into the 2 channels of your desktop audio interface. Then when you're in your DAW, you don't click the listen button. So you're not hearing that guitar come through your DAW anymore. You're only hearing it off your mixer, coming from your guitar box to your mixer to your speakers. You want to get your levels set, you click your listen button, you get your levels all set in your computer the way you like them. Click that off so you'll hear the latency when you do that. But you'll also hear the speakers when you do that, and you know, whatever. You turn that off, and then you'll be just fine. Now you're going to have your guitar on a channel or a pair of channels, and you're going to have the return from your computer on its own discrete channel, and then you're going to have your mains out, go into your speakers, controlling the volume for your whole room. 0 latency. That's how it's done. The nice thing about that also is that you can have, if you've got, you know, like a little more of an elaborate setup. Let's say you've got, I don't know, a guitar and a bass and a keyboard and a microphone. You can have them all jacked in there. You can have them all set to you can have all the auxiliary sends set the way you like them to get it all happening. And then all you have to do is mute the channels that you're not using at the time, and unmute them when you go to use it, and mute the last one you used, and just do it like that. It works perfectly. I got a bunch of people that I've shown this to that all are having great joy in their studios. They went from being absolutely befuddled as to how they're going to possibly make recordings with any latency at all in them, because I have a friend out in Alberta who's very picky about sound, and even at 4 to 7 milliseconds, that's flanging heading toward chorusing. And if you're hearing that, it's just going to completely distract. Doing it this way, he bought himself a little Mackie, I forget the model, it's a little 8-channel unpowered mixer, and the joy has come to his life. I've never seen a guy so happy all of a sudden to finally be able to make music. So that's what you want to do. You want to get a discrete monitor mix in there, have everything patched into your monitor mix, and make that the heart of your studio, and make the DAW a tap off of that. So the DAW is literally, it's like you've got this PA, and the DAW is just a recorder tapped into your PA. That's kind of a crude analogy for what it is. Now, if you've got a more extensive audio interface, like I believe the Steinberg CI2 has 6 inputs, don't quote me on that. And then you've got the bigger Focusrites, the RMEs, things like that, the M audios that are rack mounted, and they have 8 inputs and 8 outputs and whatnot. Nice thing about those is, if you get a monitor mix that's got a discrete out, a direct out or a line out from each of the channels, you can have all your stuff patched in all into the channels, and you can totally record your band that way. Now you've got a discrete channel for everything, plus you've got the complete mix, and you're going to get no latency. You can all be jamming in the headphones straight off of the mixer, or you can go from the headphone out in the mixer, to a monitor distribution system, or most good monitors have lots of ways to bust things out like that. But that's the secret. Discrete monitor mixing. Get that monitor in there. I do it sort of like that, but a little differently, because I'm forced, sort of more or less, to have my mixer over by the mechanical room. Because I have a closet over there with the computers in it. Keeps them cool on their own thing, keeps the sound down and whatnot. And I've built snakes to go from my RME device into my mixer. And so what I do is, if I'm recording guitars or vocals or anything like that, I bring up the mixer that came with my RME audio, get the levels all set, close the mixer, and now I'm recording in Cubase, but I'm hearing the audio directly off my mixer through the little gizmo in here, and I'm doing it that way. It works perfectly. There's no latency on that either. So I can do it either way. I can do it through the mixer that came with my sound card, or I can do it with the hardware mixer. And depends. If I've got clients in the studio, I do it straight off of the mixer. And if I'm just here messing around recording some tracks, I'm too lazy to get up. I'll just do it I'll do it that way, and it works just fine. Well, there you have it, guys. That's the nuts and bolts of latency. I hope you learned a little bit of something. If you think this video was worthwhile, please hit the like button and like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. There's going to be more videos coming up on topics of audio mixing and recording. In the comments, feel free to ask any questions, and I'll try to answer them as best I can for you. If you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see covered in a video, please don't hesitate. Put them in the comments, and I'll see if I can whip up some videos on that stuff. I have almost 40 years of experience in every aspect of the recording process, and I'd love to share that stuff with you. I know secrets that I've never seen anywhere on the internet that will make your recordings just outstanding, and I'd really like to share that with you guys. So until then, this has been Jeff Knight from MakeBetterRecordings.com. Now get out there and make better recordings.